and your name, once and for all, put it on record for us, because lots of commentators always ask us how we say your name. So you can actually clear this up now, can't you?
Okay.
You can tell us once and for all how we say your name and say it properly.
Okay. Ate Nuhiu. Not so difficult.
No, not now you've said it.
No. How it's written there, so you can Nuhiu. Easy.
I hereby solemnly swear that I will never mispronounce that man's name ever again.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the cherries, here come the cherries, here come the cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. The greatest week in the history of our wonderful club ended in the most glorious fashion imaginable at the Valley on Saturday as a 3-0 win for our iconic Cherries, coupled with a late equaliser for Sheffield Wednesday at Watford, saw us claim the Football League Championship title, sparking scenes of delirious jubilation which have yet to subside. Joining us to look back at an unprecedented few days for AFC Bournemouth is our old friend George James. George, how are you?
Great, thanks.
Me too. The last time I spoke to you, I think I finished off the show by saying the next time I talk to you, we could be in the Premiership, and you said, well, don't jinx it. Well, I didn't jinx it, and we are in the Premiership.
Yeah, well, I was quite positive, though. I did say I think we'll do it. I just didn't want to be like, yes. I didn't want to end up on a sort of Watford podcast if we finish third.
No, you have been very positive all the way through. In fact, even last season, you were very positive about our chances. So, yeah, you're much more optimistic than me, I think, about Bournemouth. But I know you're at the game on Monday, and unfortunately you couldn't get a ticket for yesterday's game. And on Monday, and for the days that followed that, I was just thinking, this cannot be topped. This is as good as it ever gets. This isn't going to make you feel any better, but it was actually topped by what happened at Charlton, especially sort of from the 85th minute onwards. And I can't really find words to describe how good it was. And I'm sorry you and others missed it, but yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. And just the glory which we've never had before has just been coming on in buckets this week, hasn't it?
That has been good. And you know what's super galling for me is that when we won 5-2 at Cardiff, I was on a school trip, and there is one place in Britain that you cannot be picked up and driven to the match from, and that is the Isles of Scilly. And that's where I was. So I missed that, and my whole family had hospitality and got to hold the trophy up, and everyone says, oh, best day of my life. And now all my mates now are saying, oh, Charlton, maybe top that. So the only two important Bournemouth games I've missed in 20 years, I would say, and just gutting. Yeah,
well, this might make you feel a little bit better. I did actually miss the playoff final in 2003 myself as well. I was actually in an aeroplane whilst the game was being played to New York, and I mean I won't bore you with the details, but basically I messed up in terms of organising my diary, as it were, and missed that game. And I've only just got over it this weekend. It's taken me that long, so I'm sure you'll have your day. Your day will come, hopefully sometime next season when we win the FA Cup or something, and you'll be able to get off and get over that one. But I mean, the game itself has almost become a secondary event in terms of the other stuff that's happened. Obviously, we've been promoted. We won the title, but it was a good game. I mean, it was good for us. We played really well. We played excellent in the first half, and obviously we were 2-0 up at half time. Before the game, got to Charlton, and obviously there was a lot of Bournemouth fans there, very good spirits. We arrived quite early and filled up, and it was absolutely packed, as you can imagine. And at the kick-off, prior to the kickoff, I nearly had a collapsed lung blowing up balloons with my son who couldn't do it, and there was inflatables and all the kind of usual stuff you expect everywhere. And I think we kicked off maybe 3 or 4 minutes late because they were clearing the pitch of those various items that people had lobbed around, and I think that later on added to the excitement in terms of what happened at Vicarage Road. And we were playing really well from the off, and we scored 2 early goals, the first of which came in the 9th minute, and it was a really good little move that we put together. I think Steve Cook played it out of defence to Charlie Daniels on the left wing. He played it up to his partner in crime, Mark Pugh. Pugh found Kermagon first time, who first time played it to Richie. And Richie, who's been brilliant this season, and in the running, the last few games, he's been absolutely fantastic, and he's been weighing in with the goals. He's got 15 goals this season. Released a first time left foot shot, which I'm sure you've seen, which just curled past Henderson. It was a cracker, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It just looks like such a beautiful goal. It really does. Like it's almost undefendable. There's nothing you can do. Maybe close down Pugh a bit quicker, but and even the keeper is come from behind 2 players. It just looks fantastic.
I don't think he would have stopped it. I mean, if there was been 2 goalkeepers, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have kept it out. But I think the whole goal. I mean, we've scored some brilliant. We scored lots of goals, and we scored some brilliant goals this season. And that one was up there. I think even Eddie Howe said after the game it was a possible contender for goal of the season. I mean, he's always going to love the goals where there's a few passes in and a decent move leading up to the goal. And Richie just strikes the ball so sweetly with his left foot. And we've seen it, like I said, 15 times now this season. And he's, I mean, how many? I think maybe Steve Robinson, I remember years ago getting around 15, 16 goals from midfield. But how many midfielders have we ever had that have got into the mid-teens in terms of goals? I mean, apart from Steve Robinson, I can't remember anybody else.
I'm trying to think who scored a lot. Elliot, maybe, before he moved? I don't know if he got 15. I don't think he got even teens, did he? There isn't a lot. Matt Holland? I can't think.
I think until this season, and well, certainly until the last few seasons, anybody from midfield weighing in with anything between 8 and 10 goals, we'd have been absolutely delighted with, and that is a good total for a midfielder. But we've had plenty of goals from midfield this season. Another person who's scored goals from midfield is Harry Arter, and obviously this game at Charlton was a big one for him and Simon Francis, and obviously Jan Kermagon, who's still I can report very much loved by the Charlton fans. And Harry scored the second goal, and it was a mess in the Charlton defence that Yoni Bayern, he just was. The ball came to him, their defender on the edge of the box, and he wasn't really aware that Arter was there, and he had a poor first touch. Arter just nipped in, took the ball, and put it past Henderson with his right foot, and it wasn't our greatest goal. It certainly wasn't as good as the first one on Saturday. But just more goals from midfield. A very satisfying goal for Harry Arter. He didn't over-celebrate. I mean, he was entitled to celebrate a bit, but he didn't do any of that kind of cup in his hand to the Charlton fans or anything like that. But he'd have been delighted with that one, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, I know he's famously. I'm trying to phrase this in a dignified way. He's famously sort of a wind-up merchant, isn't he? But I think if anyone, this don't celebrate against your former club. He got released by them when he was really young. So if anyone's got a right to be like, come on, it was Arter. But yeah, you're right. He was quite dignified. But I don't think he needed to be in that scenario.
You really think he should have given it to them, do you?
Yeah.
Both hands to his ears, David Beckham at Chelsea style.
Yeah, well, he got released and signed for Woking. So it's not like he's a well-loved player after one cup appearance, is it? He can do what he wants.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they must look. I mean, obviously, they're still hurt by the departure of Jan Kermagon. And like I said, I mean, they applauded him throughout yesterday. But they must look at Arter and Simon Francis, who is remembered as one of the worst players ever to wear the Charlton shirt, or so I've been informed. And just think, how have they gone from being, well, first of all, Arter, a player we released, and then Simon Francis, a player who they were no doubt pleased to see the back of. How have they gone from being, unable to get into the Charlton team and certainly unable to put in any performances that the Charlton fans or management were happy with, to being not only in the best team in the Championship, but some of the best players in the best team in the Championship? It probably says it all about how effective Eddie Howe is as a manager, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. It's just because that's what I was going to say. When you said Francis is famous for being one of the worst players to ever wear a shirt on his debut, I believe that. I can't tell you, it was against Wickham, Simon Francis' debut, and I can't tell you what the score was, but I can tell you that Simon Francis played and drove me absolutely mental. And then the other thing, that was the first time I noticed that he used to just whistle up the wing, and then no one would cover for him. The whole team would wheel around him. We discussed it sort of quite at length in the early days of this podcast. And then Arter, and this made me laugh because he was also shocking, I think, by many people's. He got sent out on loan with good reason. And one thing I noticed that he said in the Bolton programme is that he used to go online and read every single comment.
That was a mistake.
and I remember at the time, and I thought that is a bad idea. Blimey, no wonder he's so embittered. Because that was, he was. There was deserved criticism, and there was some real sort of vitriolic stuff at the time because he was really bad, but it all goes further to proving the point that what Howe does to players is absolutely remarkable. It is incredible. You look at 7, 8, 9 of that first 11 were sort of nothing, or League One, sort of middling League One players before Bournemouth. Even look at Cook and Elphick.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Those two, Cook and Elphick. I mean, the Brighton fans must be shaking their heads in disbelief. I mean, Elphick was in the team. He got a bad injury, and sometimes it ends like that. But Cook really couldn't get in the team, could he? No.
They both got. They were sort of nominal fee. They were both semi-released and unwanted and sent out on loan. And this makes it so much better when you get all these Brighton fans saying, "Oh, bought you way to the league." And I think, hang on, Sam Baldock cost you guys $2 million and scored 2 goals, and we got both of your 2, centre backs for a nominal fee, and they're absolutely dominating the league. It's just such good ammunition against them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Steve Cook, he must be worth a fortune now. He occasionally gets criticised for making the odd mistake, but overall, he's an outstanding defender, and he has been, throughout our time in the Championship. It's not like he's taken time to adapt to the league. Like 1 or 2 players like Elphick, he took a little while, and he was out of the team at the start of last season. Of course, we started against Charlton, didn't we? And Elliot Ward was partnering Cook at the back, or Mark Pugh, who didn't play as well last season, has played really well this season. Throughout our time in the Championship, which has come to a bit of a surprising end this season, Cook's been a really stellar performer, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're saying about he makes the odd mistake, it's not like what he makes are sort of distribution errors in the same way we used to see from Arter. The reason everyone couldn't stand Arter was because he used to give the ball away in our penalty area, trying to pass a lot, and Cook's doing the same thing. And I've got no doubt that Howe can train it out of him in the same way he did it out of Arter. Sometimes the ball bounces over his head, but that's true for all defenders. So he's got the potential, if he can just delete that, to be, remove that from his game, to be astonishingly good.
He may even get better. And then the rest of the game, until the last 5 minutes, I wouldn't say it passed in a blur, but it's almost been erased from my memory because of what happened at the end. And I didn't shows how much attention I was paying, or certainly how overcome I was. I didn't actually realise until after the game that Charlton finished with 10 men. Tony Watt had to go off. I think he had a head injury in the 75th minute. I had to look this up. And so they were down to 10 men in the last 50 minutes. We were dominant. We were attacking the away fans, attacking our fans in the second half. I was only about 4 rows from the front, so I had a good view of everything that happened. And they were just trying to keep the score down, and we should have really got more goals. I think we had something like 26 shots, although only a handful of those were actually on target. And then we got the third goal, and this is where the drama really started. And it was another goal from Richie. It was a pretty good goal. Challenge, they just couldn't seem to get it clear. I think Gosling ran into the box, he lost it, and then they tried to get it out, and Wilson had it, and then it went back out to Daniels, who was not too far outside of the box, and eventually it came to Richie, who'd swapped sides after Mark Pugh went off and Adam Smith came on, but he came in from the left-hand side anyway, and he ran into the box, and he had a shot, and he had two shots. The first one, I think, hit Charlie Daniels, who was trying to run into another position across the goalkeeper, and it just bounced back to Matt Ritchie, who kind of said thank you very much, and then just it wasn't as good a strike as the first one, but it was right in the corner, and another first time shot, and then it was 3-0, and I mean that was being celebrated wildly because we hadn't scored in the second half, and after 12 minutes we were thinking we're going to get these 100 goals, and that would be more icing on the cake. And so we got the third goal, and much cheering and happiness and going up and all this sort of thing, and the celebrations were still dying down. People. I didn't sit down throughout the game, but everyone was still sort of cheering the goal and singing and all that sort of post-goal excitement you get for a couple of minutes when that thing that I've only ever seen before on Match of the Day or at the end of the season, when a team is fighting relegation or something like that, and news comes through from elsewhere, and then there's a cheer in the crowd which obviously is connected to something else, and it kind of spreads like wildfire. I've never been in a crowd when that's happened before, and then what followed was a lot of delirium, but everybody not being 100% sure what had happened, and then trying to check your phone, and there was no network because everybody was trying to do the same thing at the same time, also trying to keep half an eye on our game, but after a couple of minutes it became clear that not only had Sheffield Wednesday equalised, but that the game at Watford was over. And at which point, or at some point in this delirium, you could see the players on the pitch punching the air, and the bench kind of erupted, and all the subs and the staff was stood on the touchline as opposed to being sat on the bench. And the goal at Watford, which I'm sure you've seen, was scored by Ate Nuhiu, who I've sworn not to mispronounce ever again, and it was quite a messy goal. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, really scrappy, sort of. Yeah, but they had about 8 chances to clear it, Watford.
I know.
So really, yeah, it was a scrappy goal, but they shouldn't be in that much trouble from a corner. And I know that's hypocrisy coming from a Bournemouth fan, because that's how we've conceded 90% of our goals this season, corners and crosses into our box. But it would, they just didn't clear it, didn't attack the ball, didn't clear it, let it bounce in the 6-yard box. It was brilliantly woeful defending from Watford. Just I was over the moon. I was running around the house.
I had a good look at it today. It was a free kick, actually. It wasn't a corner. It was a free kick in that sort of area. And I didn't see this on the clip, but apparently a Watford fan prematurely ran on the pitch like somebody did at Dean Court the other night, and that held the play up. And that was pointed out after the game as possibly holding up the final whistle as well. But I suppose they would have let them take the free kick. And the free kick went in, and it went to the back post, where I don't know who the other Sheffield Wednesday players were who were involved, managed to get the ball back across the goal before it went out for a goal kick. And yeah, they had a couple of stabs at defending it. One header cleared it, but only to the edge of the box. It was lofted back in, and then 2 defenders went up to head it clear, but they kind of collided with each other, and so didn't get or the defender that did get his head on it didn't get a clean header on it, and there wasn't enough power. And then it dropped to Nuhiu, and he kind of shinned it into the ground, and it bounced up over Gomez, and there was a defender on the line as well. And then, of course, you can see the Sheffield Wednesday players running off to their fans, who were all delighted, just like they were at ours when they scored that late penalty. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to indulge in too much Schadenfreude, but looking at the deflation of the Watford players, they were sort of going down on their knees and all that kind of thing, and thinking it makes it more satisfying because you think that could have been us at the end of the season in a situation like that. But instead, we had the complete flip side of that, which does make it all the more delicious, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, completely. And it actually was us. That's what happened to us with Brentford at Trafford. That's exactly what happened to us. And the other thing to say about, I've seen all this ridiculously bitter Watford guff on Twitter all season, and I'll tell you what, nothing. There's a Twitter account, which I don't know if it's still updated, but there is a Twitter account called Bitter Watford.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And I recommend you all follow it. And that is exactly why I have very little sympathy for Watford in this scenario. This is like months and months and months of just hysterical whinging from Hornets for months on end. Was it a penalty? They still haven't shut up about that red card. And yeah, it wasn't a red card, but yeah, that's not Bournemouth's fault. It was a foul. He didn't dive for it. They just never forgotten it. So I'm just so glad it's them. I just really, and this whole they've accused us of diving all season, but I can't remember which one of their players it is.
It's Fostieri, wasn't it?
Fostieri, yeah,
Wolves, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just the hypocrisy of saying Bournemouth died and all this stuff, I was discussing it with Watford fans on Reddit, and I said, I'll give you a tenner. Here's our Bournemouth YouTube account, and I said, I'll give you a tenner if you can show me one video of a Callum Wilson dive this season, and I'll send you a tenner. And not one person's taken me off on it. It's just a total myth. So I'm just, I as you can tell, I have very little sympathy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly don't have a great deal of sympathy. I think I've probably got slightly more than you. And the thing I always say when the social media needle between the fans is discussed is that it is only probably no more than 100, probably less, of Watford fans or whatever fans, and we've probably got a few moronic tweeters as well out there who say things that without actually thinking before they press the tweet button, and so it's it's less than 1% of any team's fan base that are indulgent of these things, or at least in public. They may think it in their heads or say it like I suppose this is being said in public, but you might say it to your mates or whatever. But yeah, I think lots of the majority of all teams' fans kind of take these things as with a pinch of salt. What goes around comes around, and sometimes your luck's in and sometimes it isn't, etc., etc. But that said, it's much better finishing top, and it's much better when you have that late drama scenario, which, as you said, and I was sat next to you, I think, at that game at Tranmere, and we went down on the pitch thinking we were champions, and by the time I'd actually reached the crowd of people on the pitch, it had emerged that Doncaster had scored, and so for that to be on the other foot on Saturday made it even better. And the outpouring of unbridled emotion at that point, it was tears in the eye. You could see people wiping the tears from their eyes all around you. And myself included, and then the whistle went, and it was just, words can't really do it justice. It was just like all your dreams coming true, and obviously, as I said, the actual nature of the way in which it occurred, and like even the Charlton fans were clapping our players and our victory, and they've all been very talk about the needle between the fans. It's been the complete opposite from them since that game. They've been very much saying you were much the better team, you deserve to win the league, etc., etc. But then subsequently, the players obviously came down to the fans, and there was no end of punching the air and singing, and the players all dancing around and hugging, and what you would expect in that scenario. But one of the things I enjoyed the most was after the players went off, before they got the trophy, was when they started bringing out the podium and all the kind of little bits of paraphernalia that surround winning a trophy, which we never get, and like you said, neither of us were at the Millennium Stadium, so we didn't even get to see it there. And so they bring out the podium with champions written on it, and there's this sign they brought out, AFC Bournemouth champion. They're putting it all together, and the ribbons as well, which you can see on the league trophy, and it, it was just fantastic. And then Jeff Mostyn appeared at one point, and I don't know if he really wanted to do this, but he went down to the corner of the Jimmy Seed stand that we were in behind the goal, and the West stand where some of our quite a few of our fans were, had got those extra tickets, and somebody, I couldn't quite see who it was, gave him the trophy. And then he kind of walked towards the podium, and he was, the press were demanding to take his photo, and he was smiling and all that. And then he took it up and put it on the sort of plinth thing at the podium where they had it. But I think he was a bit sheepish he's never that sheepish, but I think he was a little bit sheepish, thinking, well, people want to see the players get the trophy. They don't. It's not something that necessarily goes down well with fans if they see the chairman or the owner, like in American sport, getting the trophy before the players. And he, I think he had to sort of fulfil what was clearly some kind of obligation, but he didn't really want to do that. But then the players came out and we had the presentation. I'm sure you've seen all of that. I thought it was a nice touch that they let Mike Botto do the take the microphone for that presentation. The Charlton guy handed it over to him, and so you just got all the players going mental, everybody going crazy, and then Tommy Elphick, who I did also think I saw wiping tears from his eyes. He had his phone, and quite a lot of them had their phones taking photos, filming what was going on. And then before he went to get the trophy, he had it in his hand, and I saw him glance at it and think, what am I going to do with this? And he tucked it down in his sock before he went to go and get the trophy. And then all that stuff, like when they have the confetti and the champagne spraying that I've seen so many other teams do on the telly, and that so many times over the years, it was actually happening to us. And you're kind of looking on with disbelief. It was, I've said it already, but it was absolutely amazing and beyond anything that I could have dreamt about, like even 2 years ago when we got in the Championship. And just what an achievement.
I completely agree. And I'll tell you what I also absolutely love is that we're going to have that trophy in the club shop. Because when you look historically, well, speaking historically, it's a disgrace that you're in Division 2 and you win that trophy, because that is the trophy you see Cloughy winning, Ian Rush holding up, all these greats of English football, and it is that trophy. And I cannot believe the Premier League broke away and then sort of had to make their own one. But having that, we finished second in League 2, we finished second in League 1 for the last kick. It was so nice just to actually properly. I'd have been delighted with promotion, but it had such a gloss. This whole idea of I don't care because we're up. I really did care. It's absolutely, an astronomically incredible achievement what they've done. And it is so good for it to be topped off with that. It is a historic trophy, and that's not hyperbole. I don't think it's just surreal to see, Eddie Howe holding that trophy.
I couldn't. Yeah, like I said, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, because I've said this probably on every podcast for about the last 3 months that I've been regularly daydreaming about seeing Tommy Elphick get his hands on the trophy, but part of me thinking, well, if we get promoted, that'll obviously be the main job, and unlikely to actually get the trophy. It just seemed like an impossible dream, which is the song that keeps being played over those videos that keep coming out on YouTube, and it was actually happening before my eyes, and then after that, we must have stayed there for about another. Well, I suppose after the final whistle. Still there for about half an hour, and it was only when the game ended. I should have mentioned that prior to the presentation, nobody invaded the pitch and all that. It was very strict and forceful support for the don't come on the pitch at the Valley, because there won't be any presentations. And then I suppose once we'd actually knew we could get our hands on the trophy, none of the Bournemouth fans really wanted to go on, because we wanted to see that done on the pitch. But the Charlton players came out, went around, they got fulsome applause from their fans, polite applause from our fans, and off they went. And then most of the Charlton fans went home as well, or certainly left the stadium. And it was only then that you could actually see in the other sections of the ground, particularly the lower tier of the West Stand near the Jimmy C stand where we were, which wasn't ticketed for Bournemouth. It was a Charlton section. There must have been 300 or 400 Bournemouth fans in that bit, and then probably another 300 or 400 scattered around the ground. And they weren't obviously kicked out at the end, but during the game, a few of our fans who were in areas they weren't supposed to be were kicked out, and I can only imagine it was either they were rumbled by Charlton fans who complained, or instead of like maybe cheering for the goals and then sitting down, they were constantly standing up, singing and making a nuisance of themselves, which was only going to turn the Charlton fans' goodwill against them, and so they ended up having to leave. I heard about one bloke who got picked up on CCTV when he was going to the toilet, and when he came out, the coppers were waiting for him and kicked him out of the ground. So a few people had bad luck, but yeah, there was quite a lot of fans in the ground who were in sections that, well, I shouldn't say they weren't supposed to be in. I mean, technically they weren't supposed to be there. And the majority of them seemed to keep a pretty low profile until the end. It was just a sight to behold.
I actually tried to do that. So I bought them before the Bournemouth end went on sale. And it just said, yeah, completely, because I knew I didn't have a season ticket, and I knew because of this appalling ticket office policy that if you don't have a season ticket, you don't exist. I wasn't gonna get it, so I bought it a couple of weeks before the Bournemouth ones went on sale, got refunded. So then I asked my friend who was a Charlton fan to get one, and then he got refunded because he didn't have a red card, which is apparently what you need.
Right.
And then I tried to get a press ticket, couldn't get a press ticket. There was no way of me getting in, basically, unless, it was just a nightmare. If that had been the last day, and or Middlesbrough had won against Fulham, and we'd have needed the 3 points, I would have done basically anything.
Broken the bank.
I was considering. I actually I sort of scouted it a bit on Google Maps. I was going to actually break into the stadium and. Because I know someone who got to the Arsenal Champions League final by sleeping in the Stade de France.
Yeah.
Really high security on the day, but the day before, that was my plan. But because Watford needed, I don't know, it's stupid really. Because Watford only needed 3 points, it didn't seem as not important. It didn't seem as sort of life or death as it would have done if Middlesbrough would have won. So I just sort of did everything I could through normal means without breaking
the law. Yeah, I think that was the attitude of most people going to the game, or who didn't go to the game but obviously are fans, was that it's just a day to enjoy and to enjoy our achievement. It's very unlikely, well, not very unlikely, but it certainly seemed, well, Watford were in the driving seat, and that was certainly the approach they took on the Football League show. Did you see that? They had
it like Wickham against, Shrewsbury or something.
We were kind of an afterthought, weren't we? Because they sent all their resources. They obviously have only got Mark Clement, the guy with his cameraman and his soundman. On the last day of the season, they couldn't find it in the budget to send somebody to our match as well, and so the whole thing was kind of focused on Watford, and they sort of got egg on their face, didn't they?
Well, I mean, I can see why they sent Clem to Watford. Because you would, if Bournemouth had been ahead, they'd have sent him to Bournemouth. But the way it ended up, because even if you have because they've done it before where they've had Manish at the ground, haven't they?
Yeah.
So even if you had Manish at the ground, that would have sort of got round it, and then you cover both bases. But it was incredibly sort of stupid. And I'll tell you what only people who didn't go to the game will realise is that the Sky Sports coverage was shocking, absolutely woeful. Because obviously that game wasn't selected. It was Derby against Reading, right? Which is fine because that's the playoff race. It's more exciting. It wasn't sort of Bournemouth and Watford were promoted. I get that, but after the Derby game finished, right? They've dropped out the playoffs. All the Derby fans are going to be sort of tuning out and, making a noose, right? And for about an hour afterwards, you had Simon Thomas, picking the bones of Derby's season when Bournemouth were on the pitch with a trophy. And I was like, nobody cares. you're basically analysing for an hour Derby against Reading, who finished like 19th and 8th, and you've got teams winning the league elsewhere, and another story, one in the 90th minute. And Soccer Saturday, almost the second that the Championship games had finished, we're talking about Mike Williamson's haircut and all this nonsense about Premier League, just total non-stories. Just it was awful. I'm so glad we're part of this little Premier League media bubble. No other league exists now. I think it's going to be quite good. It's quite good to be in the sort of media circle nowadays, even if it is going to be a bit of the pat on the head coverage that the minnows get in the Premier League.
Yeah, I just was really surprised at how low wattage the coverage was. And on the Football League show, they actually did show those playoff games first. Then they went to Watford, and then eventually they kind of mixed it in with the Watford game. But we were just kind of treated as a sort of a pest. We better cover this because they have actually won the league, but we've messed up in how we've approached it. And then they had Eddie Howe on the phone afterwards. So just a picture of him. They didn't even have somebody at the ground just to do a piece to camera interview with him or get the footage from BBC South or something. All they had was this picture of Eddie Howe then talking on the phone, and it doesn't matter because we got the trophy. I'd much rather have the trophy than the coverage Watford had, but it just seemed a bizarre thing, and I don't want to sort of fuel this paranoia that can build up at a club about, we don't get the recognition we deserve, because I don't care about that as long as we have the success, and we haven't had much, but we've certainly had some now, but I was just surprised at how it just seemed a bit amateur, really, and anyway, like I say, it doesn't matter. We'll have people like Gary Neville analysing every little thing we do next season, so maybe the shoe will be on the other foot then. The celebrations then continued over the weekend. We had the dinner last night, which I didn't go. I mean, the tickets were quite expensive. They held it at the Bic. It was pretty glitzy affair by the look of the photos I've seen. Certainly not like in the old days when they used to have it at Dean Court before we had any money. But a couple of things about that. They had a load of Player of the Year trophies given out before the Bolton game, which were kind of collected very nervously by the players who just wanted to get on with the game. It was Callum Wilson and Harry Arter that won all of those. But Arter said when he was voted, I think, Fans Player of the Year, that he thought it should have gone to Andrew Sermon. I heard previously, I can't remember where, but somebody saying that Eddie Howe thought that Sermon had been the best player this season, and obviously the players appreciated him because he won the Players Player of the Year. He hasn't been somebody who has received the amount of plaudits the others in the midfield have, especially Ritchie and Arter. I mean, Pugh's weighed in with a few goals. I think that's mainly because he doesn't score that much. But I mean, Eddie Howe picks him every week. He appreciates what he does, and if you actually watch what he does and when he plays well, it makes such a huge difference to the way we perform, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it absolutely does. And like, he is the reason that Arter can go and sort of maraud up front and do what he wants. That's why it works so incredibly well as a partnership. He does all the mopping up, all the clearing up, and he's the one that feeds all the wingers. He sort of runs the show from the back, and I disagree that he's Player of the Season, because actually I think part of the Player of the Season vote is about consistency. And I don't know if you remember Sermon's performance against Norwich, but it was pretty poor. And he's had a couple of shockers this season. I mean, you can't really say that for Arter. And he did have a little drop of form, sort of mid-season, Sermon, but it doesn't take the shine off it because so many of them could have won it. But just, I mean, I think we were saying a while back, like, Player of the Season could have gone to, it could have, with good justification, gone to about 6 of them, and he's definitely one of those.
Yeah. I think
But I agree, he's most underappreciated.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. He deserves to have some sort of cast iron recognition, and it must be very satisfying to get it off your teammates. I mean, it's great to win any kind of award like that, but I suppose if your teammates vote that, the feeling that you're appreciated in your job and in your role must be very high after that. And Jan Kermorgård goal of the season. It was for his overhead kick. I think it was against Ipswich, and it was obviously a brilliant goal. There was a few goals in the running for that. I think there was Steve Cook's at Fulham, Brett Pitman's at Fulham, Harry Arter's against Middlesbrough. I think there was one other. It's quite hard to remember. Maybe it was Matt Ritchie against Sheffield Wednesday. My favourite was
Watford, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Arter against Watford.
Yeah, Arter against Watford. My favourite was Arter against Middlesbrough. But I mean, it's pretty difficult to pick one out of all of those. I mean, Jan's one was nominated for Football League goal of the season as well, wasn't it? So I did have a feeling that would be in front. But we could take all of those goals that we mentioned and probably a few others and put them across a few other seasons that we've had in the last 10 years and spread them out, and each one of them would have won the goal of the season. So
Pitman against Burton is one of the best things I've ever seen in a football stadium. Do you remember that? Honestly. Yeah. Do you remember the whole ground? Because he was so far out and he needed up, and we needed that win desperately, and the whole ground stood up and went, no, don't let them stop. And then it looped about 4 miles into the air and then clipped in off the post, didn't it? Do you know,
it was amazing.
Delirium. Yeah. That I agree, but in terms of the overall quality, if you look at that from that League Two season, you look at the goal of the season video, and then you look at it this year, sort of what's really noticeable is the quality of the goals. But I'll tell you one that should have snuck in was Ritchie against Sheffield Wednesday. Good Lord, what a strike that was! Just almost took the roof off.
You see it from behind the camera, which is obviously down the Ted McDougall stand, and you see it from behind Ritchie, and just the way it curves into the top corner of the goal it's unbelievably sweetly struck, wasn't it?
Yeah, and anyone who's ever played football knows exactly how difficult that is to do, to strike it with that much power and precision. It's just an amazing goal. I actually think that was better than I'd put that maybe third overall. So for it to not be nominated implies that it was done beforehand. But I thought that was spectacular, the Ritchie goal. And I'll tell you another one that sort of maybe I'm over-egging, but this is Stanislas's sort of sole contribution to the season. Was that, I don't know if anyone remembers the team move at Norwich.
Yeah, we passed it about 30 times.
30 times, and then Stanislas cut the entire team open with one ball, and then it sort of was crossed for a header for Wilson. But in terms of a team goal, that was beautiful to watch on the day. And I was actually in the Norwich end for that, so I had the best view of all the Bournemouth fans in the ground. But it was that was a wonderful, wonderful goal.
There's been so many. It's hard to pick one, but anyway, Jan won, and
of the 98.
Yeah, and then we had the bus parade today, and I went down to that this morning. I only went to Boscombe where it started. I think the main action was further up towards Bournemouth Pier, but I went out and did a bit of celebrating on my own last night. I couldn't really face the big crowds. But I mean, I don't know how they count these things, but apparently there was around 58,000 people went down to watch that today, which obviously suggests that we have potentially a big fan base. I mean, every single person that went to that wouldn't necessarily be a committed football follower or want to go maybe more than once. But, if you sort of halve it, it leaves you with, I suppose, 29,000 people who may be willing to come and watch us play a bit more regularly. Obviously, we've only got a small stadium, but, the potential in the area to grow the club in terms of fan base is enormous, because we've got a pretty big population. There isn't another football league, well, sort of Premier League club now for miles, but the situation with the stadium isn't going to be changing massively anytime soon. This is the time to strike whilst the iron's hot, but it's not going to happen this summer, is it?
Well, it should. This is what I mean about attracting. It's such a wasted opportunity. I mean, we cannot cope, and speaking again specifically in terms of the ticket office, the ticket office can't cope with the fans we've got, let alone another 29,000. How many clubs would you have your own season ticket holders queuing 3 times around the ground rather than just doing an online thing or sorting out beforehand, putting everyone on a list? How many clubs in 2015 would have a scenario where your own season ticket holders have to get pitched tent to be guaranteed it? Like that is the sad truth about Charlton. You had season ticket holders who were getting up at 4 a.m. There is no other club in the Premier League that would be in that scenario where it's still a first come first serve. It's just and that's completely forgetting the sort of service doled out to exiles and anyone who doesn't have a season ticket. It's just the idea of another 29,000 people, speaking as someone who is going to try and get a season ticket now because I don't have an option, but also theoretically speaking, in terms of the ticket office, most other clubs in the Championship, including little fellow tin pot clubs like Brentford have a point system. But it was theoretically possible to have gone to every 45 games and all the cup games at Bournemouth and not be able to get a ticket to go to Charlton. That is a sorry state of affairs to not have any point system. You could have gone to 45 games, bought every single ticket from the ticket office, and then still have not even had a chance of getting a Charlton ticket. And that has got to change.
Yeah, I think that is something that they definitely have to look at. I mean, the online ticketing thing and the queuing around the ground in the middle of the night is, those two things. One of those things, obviously, the online ticket thing, should solve the other thing. It isn't really it isn't really good enough in these days, and now we're in the Premier League that should happen because it's just totally unnecessary. The other stuff that you mentioned is, like you said earlier, very galling because like yourself, you've properly done the miles over the years to watch the team play, and yet you couldn't get a ticket for Charlton. The most glorious day in our history, and short of breaking the law, you were unable to actually get inside the stadium, and you weren't the only one. And a point system for away travel isn't complicated. Anyone could work out how to do it, and we need to definitely invest in whatever's required in terms of software and all this with the millions that we're about to suddenly find ourselves with to sort those things out.
And just one thing that is really important to make clear is in no way am I saying that this should be to the detriment of season ticket holders. They are completely right to prioritise season ticket holders, but you cannot then do it in a way that, like, for example, I went to more games this season, and I'm sure many other fans did without season tickets. I went to more games than it's possible to go to with a season ticket. But in terms of the ticket office, I might as well have basically gone to none for the really important games. And that's the key thing. It's just, you are completely ignored if you don't have a season ticket, regardless of, as you say, the miles you do, everything about it. And in terms of getting a season ticket next year, I'll still be lucky to get one, and I've been doing 35 games a season for probably 10 years now. 35, especially when I was a student for that 3 years, I was doing sort of 40, almost all of them. So it's just, it needs sorting very urgently. If they I'd rather them actually spend proper money on that than players, to be honest, because it is so far behind. And I know we've had a rapid rise, but it's just, when you've got season ticket holders camping for a ticket for an away match, it's just ridiculous.
Such huge crowds turning out, and even like we didn't drive up today, we caught the bus, and you couldn't. It reminded me when I used to live in London. In London, as you know, you get on public transport and you basically will put up with any conditions because that's just the way it is. There's just people packed in everywhere, and it was actually like that on the yellow buses in Bournemouth today, which was very unusual. But managed to get there and back in one piece. I think the players probably now the celebrations are dying down. I don't know what they're all doing tonight, but there's nothing official happening. Are probably relieved in a way, having enjoyed the last few days, to that sort of they can go off on holiday or whatever now and sort of rest, because they must be suffering a bit from celebration fatigue, and you'd rather have it that way than, you know, I think Watford had a parade today, and it obviously must have felt a bit half-hearted like our one did 2 seasons ago. But yeah, it's I suppose the actual official marking of our promotion, our championship winning season has sort of come to an end today. Although there'll still be plenty of recognition of it as time goes on, and obviously we've got the fixtures and all that to look forward to. Just looking back at the season as a whole, we had well, obviously a brilliant season and without doubt the best season in our history. But we had a bit of a patchy start where the results weren't what they went on to be in later months. So I think we found ourselves in 15th at one point. We had a few early season defeats to the likes of Forest is the one that sticks out for me because we played brilliant that night and came away with nothing. And Leeds is always a sickener when you lose to them, and a draw at home in the last minute against Rotherham. But it sort of started to turn around with the arrival of Arthur Boritz, didn't it?
Yeah, but also I don't think Camp was a. I feel like that's unfair on Camp, because there were a number of other players who weren't performing to the way they did in the second half of the season. You know, I feel like that points unfairly at Camp, but it did coincide with that, and Boric has been fantastic. But I said at the time, I think Camp was very unlucky, as class as Boric was. But I think any manager in the Championship who gets the call of "Do you want Boric on loan?" is going to say yes. So I mean, it did help, and he does command his area very well, and his distribution is better. Well, it's better. I don't know.
Kicking it out. Eddie Howe was going nuts on Sky the other night, but yeah, I think that's the only weak part of his game. I'm sure if he I think he's going to stick around. On the last podcast, which I did midweek, I was talking about something that had come up on the club website, and I hadn't actually read it at the time. Subsequently, having read it, the only thing I was thinking was that, regardless of the actual words, I was thinking, why are the club publishing this on their own official website if it isn't going to be a done deal? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, really? So I wanted Jack Butland on loan. He's my first choice, despite Boric's performance, because I always think keepers seem to deteriorate very quickly once they get past a certain age, and I'm certainly not saying that is going to be the case with Boric, who's been fantastic all season. But I would like Butland, but if he's staying, then I'm sort of equally delighted, and it solves that problem straight away, doesn't it? Because I think, isn't he out of contract? Or we've been told he can leave. It'll be very cheap, wouldn't he?
I think he's been told he can leave, and Koeman's made it pretty clear that he doesn't want him. It hasn't been announced that it's a done deal, and one thing he did say in that piece on the website was that I want to stay at the club, but it depends how much the club want me, which obviously points to how much you want to pay me. But I just think that they'd be managing the news coming out of the club like that, and it would only be sort of released in that way if it was looking like it was going to happen at some point. So I sort of expect him to stay, whether we sign another goalkeeper and maybe let Flahaven. I'm not sure how much longer he's got left on his contract. I mean, we've got a few goalies on the books, and most of them don't get anywhere near the pitch throughout the season. But I suppose, like again with all of them, Buchal and Allsop, it relates to contracts as well as how much Eddie Howe wants to keep them. But yeah, I think
Flahaven and Allsop are out, aren't they?
Their contracts are up, are they?
Allsop's is for sure, because that's why he said he came back, was to earn a new one.
Right.
And I can't see him getting it now, to be honest. He
was on the bench on Saturday, which quite surprised me. Lee Camp was out on the pitch celebrating afterwards. I don't know if he was injured or not. Nothing was nothing came to light. But yeah, Allsop was on the bench. I know that doesn't guarantee he'll be getting another contract, but I was just a bit surprised.
Yeah. I'll be very surprised if he's still here at the start of the season. Flahaven seemed to be signed on sort of a semi-coaching role anyway, didn't he? So maybe he'll stick around with some sort of, I don't know, one of these sort of ambassador. But Flahaven still strikes me as a good keeper. I thought he was very unfairly derided by the fans at the point that he was injured. So I still think he'd get a sort of couple years in League One, or I can't. I think Labour might leave for first team football or take an ambassador role. But I still think he's good enough. Allsop again, he's not going to get. If he wasn't getting games in the Championship, he's not going to stay. I can't see that. If we keep Boric Camp, I'll be happy for next year, basically.
I think that's pretty good. Eddie's usually pretty ruthless with the goalkeepers, but I think that's fair enough if Boric stayed. Anyway, he arrived and we went on quite a long unbeaten run. I think it was 14 games in the league. We lost to Liverpool in the League Cup.
The reserves lost to Liverpool.
Yeah. I'm still not happy.
I'm still angry about that. They were in appalling form. They were in absolutely appalling form, Liverpool. And I'm going to mention this as a sideline here. There's a Twitter account called Deluded Brendan. I don't know if any of you have seen that.
I've seen that one, yeah.
That is one of the funniest Twitter accounts of recent times, so yeah, it's worth following. But they were there for the taking, Liverpool, and we played our reserves.
Yeah, but focusing on the positive things, we had a great win against the reserves. Had a great win against West Brom in that period, and obviously the league team, the A team, were doing fantastic. We had the 8-0 win, which is the one that sticks out, and then we climbed the table, and suddenly people were thinking, oh my goodness, what are Bournemouth doing up there? And we sort of hit the top sometime around December, I think, probably around the time we played Liverpool, actually, because that was when we were. I mean, we had a great period over Christmas as well, which is always crucial, as everybody knows. We won all our games over Christmas, and we beat Rotherham in the FA Cup 5-1. That was the reserves again. But then we had a patchy spell in the start of 2015 in January and February. I think we only won 3 out of 10 league games, and I think February was particularly barren in terms of picking up points. We had one win against Wigan away, but we didn't win any of our other games. And at that point, I think we dropped down to about 4th or 5th, and it was looking like, it was always really tight, but I suppose because of the fact that we were the smallest club up there, I mean, Brentford always seemed to be just a couple of places behind us, and also because it's your own team and we haven't had virtually any success historically, you think, well, we're not actually going to go straight up. But I said on the last podcast as well that probably for about 6 months I had a feeling deep down that we were going to do it. But I kept it to myself. I was
very much did. I remember saying you sort of were trying to eke it out of me on the
pod. I'm not. I mean, it's easy to say this now because we've gone up as champions. But I was. It was like the optimism that dared not speak its name. I didn't want to reveal it in public. I didn't say it to anybody, but definitely had a kind of a secret feeling that we were actually going to do it. We were going to go straight up. Although that certainly ebbed a bit during the early part of this year. But then after that, we picked up, and there's a lot of games that stick out, and there's ones where we've scored a load of goals, had really decent away wins. But the game that sticks out for me as one of the most important was the win over Wolves at home at the start of March, because we'd lost to Brentford and Forest in the previous 2 away games. Then we drew at home to Blackburn, and it was one of those games where we had all the play, all the shots, and we basically should have won by about 3 goals. And then we played Wolves, and it felt, I remember going along that night and thinking, this is it, this is make or break. It's March, we've got to start putting it together now, or we're not going to go straight up. We're going to get the playoffs at best. And we played that night in definitely an un-Bournemouth-like way for parts of the game, particularly when we were in the lead, probably for the entire second half. There was much more booting it long, kicking it out, and just doing whatever we could to get across the line to get those 3 points. And I think that was, for me, I mean, I'm sure if you asked Eddie how, he'd probably point to lots of other games. That was one of the most important wins of the season. And then after that, we didn't lose. We went through March and April, and we either won most of them and drew a few. And if you're going to go straight up, either in first or second place, you do generally have to have, or you will have long unbeaten runs. But Eddie Howe seems to specialise in them, and once it clicks, which it has done this season and certainly the previous season when we went up, we seem to just go game after game after game with getting decent results and picking up the points and climbing the table. And I just don't know how he does it.
No, I just and also that when everyone was really sort of negative in February, that game against Derby, I said at the time, that is in terms of quality of football, that's the best. It was 2-2, but in terms of quality of opposition and quality of a game, that's one of the best I've ever seen. That 2-2. Huddersfield and Blackburn at home, not so much, and Nottingham away, certainly not. But yeah, you can't win every game. And the other stat that I'm fed up of hearing is this: we dropped 28 points from winning positions. Right? Have you seen that?
Yeah. But
I've heard so many people saying, if we hadn't done that, we'd have 118 points. And I think we scored 98 goals this season.
And we got 90 points.
Yeah. you cannot score 98 goals in a season without risking a bit at the back. And, Mick McCarthy said it in, I think, November. They were saying, or after they only drew with us, he was saying, it's one over a season. It's not one over a few, a period of a month or 3 or 4 games. And the key thing also in that February is we were drawing a lot. We didn't lose a lot. I think we only lost to Forest, I think. Oh, and Brentford. Forest and Brentford. But everything else, we're picking up points, and they really add up at the end of the season. So, yeah, it's just I'll tell you one thing that will make you laugh is that I saw a tweet the other day after the Sheffield Wednesday game when we drew. I saw a tweet from someone about I wish we'd won that Millwall game and mentioning the Pittman Stanislas incident.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a nightmare. I had like a flashback in my sleep to when Pittman and Stanislas forgot that the offside rule existed.
I did think about that recently, actually, and yeah, how. You can look back at lots of things, I suppose, during the season and think, well, it doesn't matter now, but in the last few weeks, it's been quite tense, and think, if only we'd have got that win, then we'd be clear now, and we wouldn't be as worried. But yeah, that one does stick out because
that was the most clear cut, because that was clear cut 3 points. If they were just, it was it. Like, and they didn't even. What was especially stupid is neither of them had the keeper. Either one of them could have slotted it in. Like, it was just oh god. I couldn't even find highlights of it, so maybe they've somehow managed to suppress it. But that was. Yeah, that was an awful moment. And when we were so unlucky against Wednesday, I couldn't help thinking about that, especially because I'd forgotten or semi-forgotten until I saw that tweet, and then I just woke up at sort of 4 a.m. extremely angry.
Cold sweat. Well, you don't need to worry anymore. It's going to be all right. We've gone straight up. And we've talked about the goals. We've got 100. I had a little count up today. We've got 115 in total, 98 in the league, and I think it's in terms of the points as well. You mentioned about us dropping the points. I mean, that doesn't matter because we've got 90 points. If you get 90 points, most years you're going to go up, aren't you? And also, I should have mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Watford. The finishing position, we're a point ahead of them, so we're clear winners. There's none of this you only won it on goal difference or any of that stuff. I mean, we scored the most goals, we had the best goal difference, and we had the most points. So there's no.
If you win it on goal difference with plus 53, you can't.
No, that's the rule, and goal difference throughout the last, probably most of the season, certainly the last few months. You're looking at how strong our goal difference was and thinking, well, that is another point we've got there, and that is kind of give you a bit of comfort when you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about Junior Stanislas and Brett Pittman. But I mean, it was just nice to have a win on points as opposed to on goal difference. It just gives it that little bit more gloss, I think, and it's just
and we took 4 points off Watford as well.
Yeah. And we should have beaten them in the first game because they gave away the penalty. The ref didn't send the guy off. Ian Hart then missed it. So I think we probably would have won that game otherwise if they'd have had 10 men and we'd scored the penalty. We'd have probably gone on to win about 3-1 or something. So, yeah, but I mean, our record against the teams in the top 6 is okay. I don't think it's the best. But then you might have a team like Derby who've got a better record against the teams that finish in the top 6 than us. But it isn't the top 6 you're playing. It's the 24 teams in your division. So I think it's who accrues the most points at the end of the season that counts. I think we're probably in. If you had a little top 6 mini league, we'd probably be somewhere in the middle. I think Watford are bottom of it. But we both went up, so none of that really matters. Now we've got the what feels like the double-edged sword of the Premier League to look forward to. Obviously, the fixtures aren't out for over a month, and there's going to be plenty of excitement. I'll certainly be quite excited myself to see what's coming up and where we can go and when and all that sort of thing. But there's going to be the things that we've discussed before that we're going to have to put up with as well. We had a bit of this season. The fixtures being moved at the behest of Sky Sports, kind of at the drop of the hat. The scandalously high price that away fans are charged for tickets.
I've actually had a look at this, and the prices quoted are generally because every game in the Premier League is graded. So the prices that you see are actually for if we were a top 4 side. So the prices for Grade B and C games are actually surprisingly reasonable. Because when we go to Old Trafford and Arsenal, all the home fans are going to be like, oh, Bournemouth, and it's just if you're a Grade C game, they're actually all right. Even Arsenal's 28. If we get put as a Grade C, Arsenal will be 28, and a Grade B is 37. It's only if you're a Grade A that it goes right up to sort of 65.
65, yeah.
And it's obscene money. So it's not bad. It's certainly not as bad as I thought. And actually, speaking as a Londoner, it's it's brilliant. Chelsea, Arsenal, Tottenham, West Ham, Crystal Palace, and even Villa and West Brom are good train journeys. So.
Yeah. Well, there is. I mean, obviously, I've talked about the downside. The upside can't be ignored. As lots to look forward to and things that I never thought I'd see. We're going to have a fixture list that I never thought I'd see next season. It seemed when we drew Liverpool in the FA Cup last season, it was the most glamorous game that we'd had in years, and it was such a big thrill. Wow, we're playing Liverpool. We haven't had a cup tie like this for sort of 15, 20 years or something. And now we're going to have a fixture list just packed with games like that.
It really and I'll tell you what I'm going to do for the first time in about 20 years is next year, and I don't care that I'm 25 and an adult, I am doing the Merlin Premier League sticker album.
My son collects the I think match attacks cards they're called, and he said to me, Dad, are you going to collect those next season? I said, well, I'm not going to collect them, but if you get any swaps of the Bournemouth players, don't give them to your mates, give them to me.
Yeah. No, I'm going all in on that. I'm doing that.
I know it might only happen once, so hopefully it will last a bit longer than that. But God, yeah, it's going to be another surreal moment, I think, when the fixtures come out. And
the only one that I'm really, really dreading is Stoke, because I don't know if you remember back when we weren't very good. It was an annual event that Steve Robinson would miss a penalty at Stoke. And I'm pretty sure one year he missed 2 in a match at Stoke.
Oh, I remember Steve
we even used to draw them in the cup, and that ground is just so awful. It's windy in the concourse. It takes a special kind of architectural failing to make it windy in a concourse next to an incinerator. That is just the most depressing away trip ever. And I'll tell you what, now I've said this, I'm going to jinx it and we're going to miss a penalty there. Feel guilty. Yeah. But that's the only one in the entire league that I am not sort of excited about.
Well, I mean, obviously you got the the biggest names in English football who are generally in the top half of the table. But then you've got all those other teams. You mentioned some of them: Stoke, Palace, West Brom. It depends who else stays up, but West Ham, Swansea. Swansea are a good team. Of course, we've got our friends up the road at Southampton who've been doing really well this season, unfortunately. But, there's a whole load of teams that you look at them and you think, well, if they were in the Championship, now that we've been in it 2 seasons, if we were in it next year, like Sunderland could go down. They've been in the Premier League for quite a while, and they've had like lots of spells in the Premier League. And you think if they came down to the Championship, you wouldn't sort of look at that as it'd be a big game, but not as a sort of like, wow, we're playing Sunderland in the Championship. So in the Premier League, it's apart from, well, there's quite a lot of teams, but apart from when you're playing Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, etc., there's also about half the fixtures where it isn't so much, wow, we're playing Hull or someone. It's more kind of like, wow, we're playing Hull and it's a Premier League game. So, and also, hopefully, those are games where we can pick up points.
Well, I'm doing it already. I'm doing that because, like, in the same way, but are there 3 teams worse than you in division? Like, one of the reasons I was so confident about promotion this season is because you look at those teams in this league, and I don't think that there were 2 teams who were better than us, and I actually don't think there was 1 team that was better than us over the course of the season. And I think if you look at who's what currently, and I know it's impossible with all the season kicked off and signings and everything, but we know we're better than 2. Right, because we finished above them in a sort of 45 games to 46 game season, whatever it is. And then if Hull stay up, or especially Sunderland, if Sunderland stay up, they don't look like they're ever going to win again. So there are a few teams who I'd back us to be, I'd say in the current table about 12th or below, I'd back us against any of those teams, and that's Palace, West Brom, Villa, Newcastle, Leicester, Hull, or Sunderland, because QPR are gone basically. And a few points picked up against, you can't go a season and lose all your games against the big 4, so a few surprise points we pick up will be I think there are 3 teams who are going to be worse than us next year.
Yeah, I'm pretty superstitious when it comes to making predictions, especially of this nature. But you sort of think, well, with the attitude and the know-how of the squad, and obviously the manager, and the way that we'll obviously be able to add to the squad, and hopefully the players we do add will have an impact, which didn't happen so much this season. Well, we had Boris, obviously, and Callum Wilson. They made a big impact, but Gosling and Stanislas, the ones that spring to mind, didn't really perhaps live up to expectations. But if we could probably get 3 players maybe in that have a really positive impact on our performances in the Premier League, then you think, well, everything that's happened since Eddie Howe has come to the club in his 2 spells has surprised me. But it's getting to the stage where now you think, I won't be surprised if he surprises me again, and we finish kind of 12th or something like that.
Well, that's the most comparable team to us in recent history of the Premier League is Blackpool, in terms of style of play, passing football, and sort of status of the club in terms of size of club. And they went down, but they got 39 points, and that is enough to stay up in sort of a majority of the years.
Yeah, it could be this season.
It is this season. It is this season.
It looks like
you get 39 points this season, I think you'll stay up for sure. Because Sunderland are on 33 with 3 games left, so they're not going to win. They're not. Well, 39 is enough, and if Blackpool can get 39, I don't see why we can't, especially with Howe. And he's made these plays. You look at Francis, you look at Arto. You think if he can sign someone even half decent and do half the job that you do with those players, there's no reason to doubt it in my mind.
There is a few reasons in my mind, but I think they're more to do with the history of the club as opposed to the facts. And
the second thing is that I don't fit. When Blackpool did it, they had this wage cap and they had all this, we're not doing any big signings and stuff. Denham was prepared to spend $5 million on Damari Gray in the Championship. So we're going to get more back in than I think most people realise. So, here's one that I'll be over the moon and doing cartwheels if it happens, right? Eddie Howe has signed Charlie Austin twice. QPR are nailed on to go down. And we're not short of a few bob currently. So that I think, can you imagine that Austin Wilson front line?
It'd be brilliant. I mean, obviously he's from here as well, which is a temptation perhaps for him to come back.
Premier League manager he likes, who's
that'd be great. Yeah. I mean, I'd be surprised. Like you say, it would be a bit of a cartwheel moment because you get the feeling he might get offers from. Well, but they're all bigger clubs than us in the Premier League, but more sort of attractive
the 19
names.
Bigger clubs.
But I suppose we've got a few things in our favour. One is we're in the Premier League. Two is we've got a bit of money now, and three is he's from Poole or something, so he's more likely to be tempted by us than any other tiny club that suddenly finds himself in the Premier League. So we'll have to wait and see. But it's going to be an interesting summer, which will then lead on to a very interesting season. But we better wind it up there, George. It's been a good chat about a fantastic season, and I know you've gone up and down the country as always, and putting the miles, as we said earlier. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope you can get a season ticket next season because you, like many others who've done similar, deserve to see as many of those games as possible. So have a good summer, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, always a pleasure, and I look forward to who do I most want to beat. If we win at Stoke, I want to do that one next year.
All right, you're nailed on.
Feet of Stoke away.
I'll pencil you in now. Good man. All right, thanks a lot, George.
All right, brilliant. Cheers.
Fantastic work as always from George, and I'm delighted he was able to see the Bolton game, although like many others, he deserved to be at the Valley as well. The season may be over, but whilst the players take a well-earned break, I plan to continue podcasting every couple of weeks or so during the summer recess, which will hopefully include a few interviews with those in and around Dean Court, as well as possibly some fondly remembered names from days gone by. In the meantime, if you're interested, you can listen to a short interview I gave to American podcast Socrates recently about our success this season, and although you may not hear me tell them much you don't already know about the Mighty Cherries, it's worth downloading on iTunes just to hear the presenter's mangled pronunciation of the word Bournemouth. That's about all for now. Just wanted to finish by saying thank you to everyone who's come on all departments this season, and all those who've done bits to help out behind the scenes, and of course, to yourselves for listening. So up the cherries in all departments, and goodbye!
That is it! Neil Swarbrick brings the game to an end. Players collapse to their knees as the sun comes out to welcome Bournemouth's title. Jumping in each other's arms, relief, exhaustion and happiness. Applause all round the ground. The Charlton fans stand to applaud AFC Bournemouth. The Cherries fans applaud their heroes, and they have done it in style. Played 46, won 26 games, and they've scored 98 goals along the way. They are the champions of the Championship, and they go to the Premier League in the best style possible after another scintillating display. And Eddie Howe punches the air with both fists as he looks to the Cherries fans. What a day for the 4,000 travelling supporters and for the rest of you back in Dorset. It has been phenomenal, the whole season, the performance today, and the twist in the tale that has gone their way. Watford 1, Sheffield Wednesday 1, Charlton 0, AFC Bournemouth 3. AFC Bournemouth win the Championship.